Sean, I always love when people reach out to me and go, do you know what? I'm involved in the GAA abroad. I mean, little heart just leaps altogether. Could you tell me how you managed to get involved over there in Belgium, in the GAA there?
Yeah. Well, when I came over back in November 2018, kind of I think the best way to do it when you're moving abroad into a city that you don't really have a clue what's going on or where to move, you message the GAA club, and I messaged one of the former PROs. He's one of our hurlers still now playing, and I messaged asking, where's places that maybe I should avoid, or where's places that, like, in terms of the area, what are kind of web pages or websites or Facebook groups I should join, or whatever in that sense. And he gave me, like, he was very sound and gave me like this big list of like kind of maybe areas that are where the majority of, say, the Irish are staying, where kind of places to might be avoided, because in different cities around Europe, there's some places that maybe not so much suited for the likes of Irish people. But so I messaged him and then moved over, and I kind of came during the winter time and there wasn't much too much going on. So then I got a message saying in January that we're doing a bit of pop-up hurling in the park. So usually we train like on an actual rugby pitch, and we have the full pitch available. But during the month of January, just on a Sunday morning at like 10 o'clock or 9 o'clock in the morning, we have these little goals, maybe waist height, and you might play 5v5 in it for the hour. So I said I'd come along to that. So then joined in there and said, I'm only going to just play hurling. But then obviously some lads in the football team might be like, oh geez, you play football at home, sure, you can join us as well. So then I got roped into the football as well. So I play football and hurling, and I've been playing it for a good bit now with Belgium, and I would see it as my home parish / club. I know I have my home clubs back in Ireland, but I find now this is kind of where I'm a bit more settled in with it.
Footballers are devils for doing that kind of thing. If they see a hurling, they just go, yeah, I know you love the hurling, right? But come on over here, kick
Yeah.
Would you describe yourself then first and foremost as a hurler? And what's your club background at home? Was that what
no, so I would be, so I'm from Meath, so I'd be from a football club called Summerhill and a hurling club called Kiltale. Both of them would be fairly strong senior teams in Meath. During college, you'd be working during the weekends, and you'd be in college during the week. So a lot of the time I was only able to play one, but I would still, obviously, I'd be playing both of them up until minor under 21. And people ask me this, if I prefer hurling or prefer football, and it really depends in what form I'm in terms of, at the moment, I would probably say I'm playing better at football than I am at hurling. We had a couple of tournaments already this year, and the hurling performance haven't been as good, but the football has been better. So at this moment in time, I prefer football, but you could easily ask me now in a month's time, and I would say I prefer hurling. In terms of last year, I was the hurling manager. But this year I've just become a player. But yeah, I'd never say any preference, because I've played them both as much as possible in growing up, and I'm doing the same now as well.
Hurling is difficult though, because like football you can walk away from, and I don't know, I just get the feeling I can come back to football a year after without touching a ball. I still know what to do, but there's a skill involved in hurling that you have to keep fresh. You have to be out there poking the slither off the barn wall the whole time, just to keep it in there, and it requires a little bit more. Were you surprised when you got to Belgium in 2018 that there was such a vibrant scene? Because you came along at a time when it was starting to get quite mature. There was 80-90 clubs in Europe. There was a lot of games to be played where you were living.
Yeah. I had no kind of idea. I knew there'd be a good few people Irish, kind of just to do with the EU and the institutions, but I didn't really have a clue that, say, like, so Belgium GAA, we would be one of the biggest clubs in Europe, if not the biggest, but Amsterdam are pretty big, and Luxembourg as well, and there's a few in Madrid, and Warsaw would have a decent size as well. So we used to, I remember I seen old things from a while back saying that we're the biggest club in Europe, but me being PRO now, I changed all the websites to say we're one of the biggest, so no arguments can happen or anything like that. It's more
come at the king, you better not miss.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So I was massively surprised in terms of how many people are out playing football or hurling, and then we have an incredibly successful ladies football and camogie team as well. So we have around 100 to 115, 20 members in our club, and probably you'd get maybe maybe 15 to 20 to 25 people down at training per code on a night. So when I first saw, I couldn't believe then kind of how many people, because sometimes you'd play at home, you go to a training at home, and especially maybe in January or February, and you might only get 10 or 11 people maybe coming down training on whichever day. But I definitely felt that there's a big sense of Irishness in Brussels. Definitely, an example that I say at home, people think it's crazy, is I've never heard Irish being spoken so much in my life than living in Brussels, without a doubt. Now, I'd be near a Gaeltacht area in Meath. There's a small Gaeltacht area in Meath called Rathcarn, but here, I'd say nearly every night at training, lads would be speaking to each other in Irish, because a lot of their jobs involve speaking Irish. Now, I don't have Irish myself before you ask me anything to say anything in Irish. But
I was going to switch there, but let's not do that.
No. But lots of lads we speaking to each other in Irish at training, or if we meet up at the weekend for a few drinks or watching a game on the TV, they might have a conversation in Irish, which I found at the very start. I was like, what is going on here? But it's great to see as well.
And that would be people who work for the EU, maybe as translators or in some sort of government or civil service job there, that kind of thing, would it?
Yeah. So you'd have translators, but also because Irish is an official language of the EU. So if I wanted to go work in one of the institutes, I would need a second language, which I don't. I only have English. So, but I get away fine in terms of living here. It's no problem. But people could use Irish as their second language, even if they mightn't necessarily need to use it. They just need to kind of pass a certain test. It's called the episode test, basically, in Irish. And so a lot of people do use it, but then a lot of people would just use it to be able to get into the institutions.
Yeah. It's one of the things I noticed since I started doing these podcasts, Sean, that it's definitely making a comeback. Like in the 80s when I was growing up and going to the Gaeltacht and learning and that kind of thing, and then it fell away because you've nobody to use it with, But I've noticed now, we had Jane on this podcast a little while ago down in the GAA Room, and she's offering online lessons. There's a group here in Stockholm in Sweden. They meet up in Veersson's pub and they speak in Irish and they help each other out and that kind of thing. Is it, you mentioned that when you're out on a Saturday night, you might have lads sitting in the corner there, not necessarily sitting in a corner, but they'd be speaking Irish like in a very sort of a very lively social setting. That's all part of it, is it?
Yeah, 100%. Like an example, actually, just last Saturday we hosted a KLE, and that was the first time we were able to do that since 2019, obviously with COVID and so on. And we had around 100 people. It's basically, as you would imagine, a town or a parish hall. And we had maybe 6 or 7 Irish musicians, and we had around 100 people there. And not a lot of people would know how to dance or whatever, but it was some out the crack. And throughout the night, obviously there was a lot of Irish being spoken, and there was people that not even part of the club were getting involved, just Irish living out here that you wouldn't really see. But I think it will be it's a big thing, especially for a lot of people over here, that they want to keep it going and want to just keep the language fresh, and it's involved with a lot of people's jobs, but they feel that it's maybe necessarily just to exactly as you said, promote the language and just to keep their own kind of mind set on it, and not, even though they're very good, they speak completely fluent, but maybe just so they don't lack in it, basically.
Well, it's very much a case of use it or lose it, because that was the same thing. I would have had a fairly decent level at leaving cert level. And that's just, at the moment now, I'll watch TG Carr and understand what they say, but get me in a conversation. It doesn't take me long until I get stuck looking for a word, And you mentioned there, you just sort of flew by that thing, PRO now of Gaelic Games Europe, right?
No, the Belgium.
Oh, Belgium GAA, sorry. No, that's a mistake on my part then, because I was one of those people who sort of got involved as chairperson in our club here and fell in then to Gaelic Games Europe as well. As PRO, this is one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you, Sean, because you seem to have a much better grasp of TikTok, of live streaming, of that kind of thing. Is that where the growth in the GAA is going to come from, the growth in awareness? Is that where the new players are going to come from? Have you seen anything from the work that you've done as PRO that's bringing in players through that channel?
Yeah, I 100% think so. Like, for instance, what I've done, so at the moment, I would say in Europe, in the camogie scene, last year our own camogie team were maybe they were maybe the only teams that were going or competing. There's sometimes there would be other teams, but there was at one stage there was a tournament and there was 3 camogie teams in it, but all 3 were Belgium. So I went to do a test, not with Europe, but just in the city of Brussels, where I started doing some paid advertising. So, it doesn't even have to be necessarily too much in terms of the GEA scene, like maybe 100 to 200 euro, and over a 5 or 6 weeks period, where like advertising just the sport, so it's about getting people involved and paying that on their Instagram as they're scrolling through stories or reels on Facebook and so on. I feel stuff like that, there's a little gap in the market there because people are interested in it. And I feel the way I kind of see it sometimes is coming out, say, just for the Europe sense, is moving abroad here. You might think that the level or the kind of competitiveness or the dedication that's needed to play in Europe is the same as it is at home, when I wouldn't say so. So say, from my experience back at home, you might be training 3 times a week and possibly in a game as well, and sometimes you might have a 9 a.m. on a Sunday morning type of training. But over here, it's more of a social thing. And what I try to do as PRO is to try to say that it's all levels, so people are starting from beginners, and not even Irish people are starting, which is great in our club, especially on the ladies' side of things. But I feel that to try and like, if I'm back in Ireland, right, say, and I've never played football or hurling in my life, and I go to maybe 22 or 23, and it could seem very intimidating maybe to join a senior club or an adult club back at home. So I try to make the point that this is a very kind of easygoing. We take it serious when we play. I'm not going to say we're on the points all weekend and we don't really care, because we do as well. Of course, I do. I put in a few hours a week every week for a year. I'm obviously going to care and kind of want to be competitive. But at the same time, we try to encourage the social side, and it's very social as well. And we, as Belgium, have always pride ourselves in having 2 teams, so an A and a B team, or we call it the development team. So it doesn't matter your skill level, there's still going to be game time. And if you're around for training for once a week or twice a week or whichever, it's still good in that sense. So it's about kind of promoting it from Europe's side anyway, that this is a good way to connect with the Irish community, no regardless of what your skill level is, and you still have fun, still have game time as well. In terms of what you asked for the GEA at going back, yeah, I think I would think there's still more that can be done. I definitely don't want to slate anyone or anything like that. But
it's always do a Joe Brolly on it. Go on.
No. But when you mentioned the TikTok, going to the other side is the page I run called the GAA Room, and I've started that around 3 months ago, and it's going very well. And what I've started to do is try and find things that the GAA or kind of other broadcasters mightn't necessarily be doing, and kind of trying to target that market. So, for example, kind of a good example on that might be a couple of weeks ago was the end of the National League across all 4 divisions. It was the last game week, so it was like some teams were going to get promoted, some teams were going to get relegated. So like, it was a lot of things could have happened, but all the games were on at the same time on the last day. So I made the best way to call it is like a Gillette Super Soccer Saturday type of thing, a live stream for like 2 hours or 3 hours, where, say, I was looking at Division 2 and I was watching the game of Division 2. One of the lads was watching the Division 1 game, and he was keeping an eye on the table of that. So we had a live table from another GA live league tables on Twitter. He was doing a live stream of that. So we were able to have like 4 lads each watching each league. But one of the lads had a Fermanagh game in his ear, listening to a radio station. Another lad was listening to Division 4, and I felt like something like that. So I tried to find these little things that maybe could be done or maybe could be done, and I find that like sometimes I just see, this why are people doing this, and then trying to do in that sense. So there's definitely a way to up it a bit more, a small bit more even, different ideas maybe, yeah.
We streamed a few games live here. I don't know if you know Jerome Quinn, who does a lot of stuff at Champion of the North. He does a lot of stuff in it. And we streamed, I can't remember what year it was, maybe 2018, 2019. We streamed games here from Stockholm. and there was a tiny, but probably the most dedicated audience I've ever had for any live stream I've ever been involved in. Like people just go, there was one lad playing for us, and I think he split an eye open or something like that at some point in the season. I mentioned that in the commentary, and he'd never told his mother that he was after getting a bang in the head earlier on in the year, you know? So he got into trouble over that. But it does seem to be a way to create engagement. But I suppose one of the questions I have for you, Sean, is you mentioned the paid advertising there, taking a couple of €100 and putting it out there. Who are you aiming for, right? Because with social media advertising, you can throw a whole bunch of stuff at the wall and see what sticks. Are you very specific? Is it only Irish people, or is it, everybody who's basically looking for a bit of crack, somewhere to do, something social to do?
Yeah, so with our club, I did say both of those things which you just said. So I was looking, I did for say a certain type of ad, I would specifically target Irish people, people who are interested in, say, the IRFU, the FAI, who are
Not sure I can say the IRA there.
No. no. But I would then, you can put a radius around a city, so I'd say Brussels, and then I might do Ghent or Antwerp, which are a small bit outside of Brussels, and that would be, say, you would be specifically targeting the Irish side. On the other side, a lot of people, especially I'm going to say the ladies' side because they're such a great team. A lot of them bring other sports over. So say hockey would be a big thing. They would bring that over. We had a lad playing on our hurling team, that American guy who was playing lacrosse. We had a basketball player join. She was like really good at, say, defending or marking, like really quick on the feet. So I was getting different sports that from experience of people who played a different sport, say, with our club, and bringing their skills over to join Belgium, join Gaelic football or hurling. A couple of years ago, a baseball player started playing hurling, and so on. So I was targeting people who had interest in those sports as well, who might want to give a new sport, because some of them can be like a diamond in the rough, would be a way to say it. That you could see their technique that they were using, and then it just takes a bit of training then to bring that into the Gaelic sports as well. So a bit of both, I would say, yeah.
Do you find it difficult? We've, when you look at the clubs, we're small enough in Europe in terms of we don't have, 15 coaches hanging around there and people to take the kids' teams and this kind of thing, right? So it's usually the same people doing the same stuff all the time. It's the same person taking a team out, and next year they'll take the ladies, and then they'll be back with the men and this kind of thing. When it comes to teaching people, especially hurling, which is a game of skill, right? Do you find it difficult to teach a baseball player, a lacrosse player, going, okay, baseball, he's not just going to throw the ball at you, you have to go and get it and pitch it to yourself and this kind of thing. Is it difficult to teach them those skills, Sean? Do you need to have a coach's education to be able to do that, do you think?
I wouldn't say completely a coach's education. Some people here would include myself, say, even foundation or level 1, but it can be difficult. So you would need, so like you might have 15 to 20. So for me last year, say, you might have a training session, 15 to 20 lads there, and you have a massive range of skill level. So we have a guy who played on the Dublin hurling team or on the Dublin hurling panel, which would be a very high standard, even if it was a few years ago. And then we might have someone who's completely new to the sport, and then you're trying to find the balance of how these two people are going to be playing against each other or on the same team in terms of a training match or whatever you want to do. So I would agree that you sometimes need a bit of manpower. So we would sometimes, if a new person is coming down, I might ask one of the lads who might be around, could you maybe show that person, just as I take the 14 or 15 lads for the training, possibly would you bring this person just a one-on-one session for half an hour and show them the basics and so on at the same time, and then maybe bring them in to the training. So it does require that. If you're on your own, it's very hard to be able to deal with that mix of players. So sometimes it's good that to have someone maybe that might be able to help out, which we would. They wouldn't be there the whole time, but if you asked them, they would be more than welcome, or they're more than welcome to do so. And we'd have players that would. We had, like, there's one of the guys on our team who would really help people out, and after training would be like, oh yeah, here, come have a poke around with me and we'll go through some things, that type of way. So there's people that are there willing to help out. So, but sometimes it's just you're required to ask them, basically.
It's a fascinating one because I think it's one of those things that for years you were saying you didn't want to have a go at anybody, but I've been around long enough now. I probably have earned the right to do that. And I kind of think that, we're fine with the Irish people who've seen the game and who understand the game, even if they've never played it before. But when we're bringing in complete outsiders to it, I've always thought that we don't do a great job of selling it to them. And I think it would be great in places like Brussels and Leuven, which is not too far from where you are there, and in Antwerp, and that there's so many people who play Olympic handball, who play sports that we don't consider to be like Gaelic football or lacrosse. You often forget that is, quite similar to hurling. That anything with a stick, hockey, floorball is another big thing in Europe that we don't even do in Ireland. And that somehow I think we're missing a huge target audience there. Is TikTok or Instagram the way to get those people? Because there's too much grey in this beard. I'm not the future of Gaelic football anymore. Not that I ever was, But is that how we reach these people? Do we have to make, sort of viral videos to get them involved, would you think?
Yeah, 100%. I definitely think so. Especially if you want to start, the demographic is kind of getting away from, say, you would say Instagram and TikTok might be kind of a younger demographic than, say, Facebook possibly. So I definitely do think so, because I don't think you're going to get someone who's maybe, now like, obviously I'm wrong here, but kind of maybe 35 up who's never played the sport before to join. But if you get people who maybe around college or just coming that age and want to try something new, who might be a small bit more energetic, and I think that is a way to do so, because it's right in everyone's hands. It's obviously it's instant and it's constant right in front of people. So I did a video actually at maybe a month or two ago on TikTok, and it was a day in the life of a European Gaelic footballer, and I was doing it basically on myself, going to the Netherlands, playing the game of football all day, having a couple of pints after the game, and going through that, and that got, I think it got nearly 200,000 views, I think, for that only video, over TikTok, Twitter and Instagram, and doing something like that I think is a very interesting approach to being like, we're playing football, I'm looking forward to doing it where I have to get on a flight. So there's, say, a tournament in Dresden, which is the far side of Germany for me. So we'll be getting on a flight and flying over, and the weekends away are great crack. The day trips are good, but the weekends away, like Munich last year we went, and it was one of the best weekends of the year, and I'm really looking forward to doing something like that. But that's doing stuff like that, I think people can relate to that no matter what sport you play. Going with there was, like, say, 20 lads and 20 women, 40 to 50 people from the club all going to the exact same place together to play a day of sport from teams all over Europe, and that could be, you could have around 200 players from say hurling, 100 from camogie, and it doesn't matter what sport you do there. You can see that and be like, this thing looks class. This looks really fun, and after the tournament, then everyone has dinner and we do the presentations and drinks that night and so on. And I think it's really something special, especially out here in Europe. And I think it's something that might be a bit underrated. Even if you're kind of in Ireland, you might think of going to America or Canada, Australia or New Zealand. When I think Europe is right at the doorstep, so it's a bit of a hidden gem. I would see it, and people wouldn't necessarily think about these things, but I feel, especially Brussels is a very underrated city, and the language was something that I was afraid of, but was also, I barely speak French. I can ask for maybe a receipt and a plastic bag in the shop. That's about the height of it, and I get away with it in a sense as well.
It's brilliant. Those away trips you mentioned are underrated, because, like, we just came back from one day. We travelled down to Malmo and then back to Stockholm. I came back the same day of the tournament. I had to be back because I was working on Sunday. But the WhatsApp group alone is the most... I cried laughing at what was going on in that. And fellas forgetting things and bring the balls and go, oh, where are y'all now? Oh, we've gone on to this pub. There was too many in the pub at the presentations. Where, have you seen this? Oh, I lost that. Does anybody see my bank card? This kind of... And everything that was going on. Now, there's a load of other stuff in there that you couldn't even mention that we're up to as well, But it was like, that really brings people together, because the same fellas and the same girls then will be going out, having a drink, going for a jog, joining a gym together, going and seeing a gig or that kind of thing. So it really is developmental in that way. And what was it that brought you to Brussels? Was it the opportunity you didn't move over there solely to play for Belgium GAA and make TikToks, did you?
No, I'm not that good now. I'm not that good really to get poached across. No, I basically finished college in 2018 and was applying for a few jobs I had no kind of nothing in my head to say about moving abroad, because I did a J1 in Chicago, and the work didn't go too well or whatever. It was a great experience, but say it wasn't the best experience. So I didn't really have much of a thought to go abroad. I was like, I'll just keep looking for jobs in Dublin, which I had a few interviews or whatever, and not kind of coming up. And we had a WhatsApp group after college, a few of us, where we would send job opportunities to each other. So one of the guys put in the chat and say someone should apply for this, and it was a job in Brussels. And I just said, sure, I'll apply for it. This has been maybe 6-7 months after college finished. So kind of I was working in a shop, and I was just kind of fed up, and I was like, oh, sure, I'll apply for it anyway. Sure, I'll apply for it, and then got the interview, and I was like, oh, sure, I'll do the interview, because my dad always says, always do an interview, even if you don't want the job, or you don't, just do the interview or whatever and see how you get on. So then got offered the job, and said, oh, sure, I might as well. I said, at the time I didn't have a girlfriend, kind of, I was just like, why not? I've nothing holding me back here, so I might as well just give it a go. And I thought to myself, sure, I can always just go home, even if it's 6 weeks or 6 months, because it was only a traineeship. I said, there's always, like, Brussels to Dublin is an hour and a half flight. It's not like what's the worst that can happen? I get a cheap Ryanair flight back to Dublin and call it.
Say nothing to nobody.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then, what line of work are you in? Just because, are you involved in anything to do with communications and that kind of thing? Was that your field of expertise?
I studied in college, and I'm like graphic design, video editing, website design, and all that. So that is what I do basically. So I work for a European Animal Feed Association, which wouldn't be my background in terms of agriculture, but I'd be using my skills in terms of your graphic design, video editing, web design, and so on through that work.
I keep thinking that somebody like yourself, with those skills, with that education, with that background, being in Brussels, being involved in the GAA and that kind of thing, and I just wonder why, as PRO of Belgium GAA, I was PRO of the European County Board, as it was previously called. It's now Gaelic Games Europe. I was thinking, we so need somebody like yourself in America, in Australia, in Asia, and in Europe to do this full time, because I don't have the time and the energy and the resources to go and do this. I wish I did, but to have people doing that, because again, I always go back to this thing of the future of the games with people whose names we don't even know. And it's also with native players, right? Because if we all walk away from these clubs in the morning, I would love Belgium GAA to be still there. If there wasn't an Irish people left there, if the EU closed down in the morning and Nigel Farage walked in, and the same thing in Stockholm, do you see a need for that? Is that something that you would see as being feasible for the GAA to do? Is it something desirable? Is it something you yourself would like to do?
It's definitely something I would like to do. A lot of things with my account with the GAA Room, it's great to do, but I kind of I'm also adding it as something to add to the CV. I'd love to maybe get into something eventually, into sport. The GAA, I always say, doing this for the GAA or working for the GAA, doing this kind of communications thing would be great, but I don't want to move back to Ireland, so I want to do a job that can only be done in Ireland, type of thing, where you actually would get paid, or even if it's not with the GAA, with a different media agency that might be doing reporting or whatever, in that sense. So it would be great. So even now my time is, say, less limited on the Belgium side and more focused on my own personal side. Last year I didn't have it, so there was a lot of things that were involved, especially our ladies football team. They got to the All-Ireland Junior Club quarter-final, and we hosted over in Maastricht, and I even did say, I sent the press release out after we bet a prelim against the UK champions, and I sent the press release, and I didn't hear any word about it. And then hersport.ie got onto it, and then next thing it snowballed into this massive thing where I was getting emails. So the Irish Times, the Irish Independent, we were on Sky Sports News, RT News, the Examiner. There's all these different news agencies. There was this massive interest about this team in Belgium, who are now playing Castleblaney Falls from Monaghan, and it was over in Maastricht to it. So I definitely think there is an interest in it, and we've seen people even on my TikTok saying that, Jesus, it's great to see the Irish are still playing and it's going strong across Europe. And when you would think that a lot of time, like, everyone knows in America, it's strong, the standard is strong, and even Australia, the standard is strong, but nobody kind of thinks about maybe the European scene or the Asian scene, like you said as well. So it would be great to be able to have people who are solely focused on that, but then you have to ask yourself about kind of how much can you actually do when there's only maybe a tournament, say a football tournament every month, and then a hurling tournament every month as well. So if you're doing both sports, which I am, maybe every second week you're playing, but if you're only doing one, you play maybe 1 month and then you're waiting another month to go again. So it's sometimes hard to generate that content at the same time as well. But it definitely would be great to have maybe even part-time possibly, where the focus is promoting them around. We, especially with the World Games coming up, it probably could be emphasis a bit more, but yeah, so that's all really. Then I kind of went on a bit too long maybe about that, but yeah.
Not at all, no. It's a fascinating subject because there's people around the world listening to this who love Gaelic games, right? They love watching their county or their club play. GAA Go, I used to describe it as a tax on Irish people abroad, but I do appreciate what it brings to the party for us all to be able to see games from Parnell Park down the road from your ma's house. It's absolutely brilliant. But it's just that thing of that development thing. The reason I love talking to somebody like you and from your generation is, do you also understand not just how to reach these people, but how to measure that engagement, right? So if you take your A Day in the Life of a Gaelic Footballer video that you did on TikTok, it came out on Instagram, came out on Twitter as well, can you see if that converted into anything? Did you put a link in there that says, by the way, sign up for Belgium GAA or check out your, is there any conclusions you can draw from who watched that and what they did afterwards that you can use as a sort of a pointer or a bellwether to point us to the future?
This is a hard thing. Like, so even with the advertising, so people would be scrolling through and it would come up and they might just think, they mightn't even think about it, or they mightn't necessarily kind of, be kind of in their brain, and then maybe all of a sudden, oh yeah, geez, I've seen they're playing along. So we had a good few players join at the start of the year, and what I would like to think from the advertisement, but people might say to themselves, or you might ask someone, oh, did you join? How did you join? And it's like, oh, I just seen it, but maybe not necessarily. It might have been through advertising or so on. It's very hard to grasp. You can have where your people click the link or whatever, and how many people go on, but then you can't, it's very hard to individually track, okay, did this come from an advertisement? Did this come from someone speaking to something? Like, you can personally ask that person, but if you have 30 to 40 people joining a club in the winter, it isn't the easiest thing to do at the same time. I like to think sometimes, so with the Day in the Life, a lot of people were also Irish, just talking about playing in Europe. I did one with Camogie, and then I went through Europe. Maeve, who is the Camogie officer with GGE, she's from Belgium, and I gave her the video because she's trying to promote Camogie, and I was like, use this video, even though I used it already on TikTok, but I was like, use this video and post on your own channels as well, because it's great to promote just in Europe, basically, about Camogie, like, because there needs to be a small bit more kind of push, because I definitely would say men's football is the most strong in terms of presence, in terms of numbers. Hurling, so in football you would have your regions, you would have 5 regions in Europe. Like we play in football, we never play against Stockholm, but in hurling it's Europe. Camogie, it's Europe. Lady football is also regions as well. So in terms of the hurling, Camogie might need to be, I think the eventual plan is to regionalise it. Hearing from Tony Bass, who I know you have had on your shows.
Tony, great bloke.
So we know well. And eventually, I believe that is the plan from GGE, is to regionalise hurling and Camogie, but there needs to be a bit more, just a small bit more kind of presence along it. And I'm not sure why. Maybe football, maybe just more popular sport, or people coming out here, but football at the moment is a bit stronger, which is great because it's very strong as well. In terms of all over Europe, they're getting teams involved.
Well, I think traditionally it's always been, young lads who emigrated first, and therefore they bring the boots, and men's football is always going to be the growth engine or the thing that drives things forward. But, we can't afford to forget the women's games. We can't afford to forget hurling just because you need a bit more equipment and it's a little bit harder to do, right? Now, Sean, for the social media illiterate, right? That's me and vast amount of people who are over the age of 30, right? If they want to do this in their own clubs, if they want to promote the games in their own languages, in Norwegian, in Finnish, in that kind of thing, how do you make a TikTok that gets 200,000 views on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram? How do you make a video that does that? What are your sort of top tips for doing that kind of content?
Yeah, well, especially on TikTok, like it just takes a bit of time on your phone, and it doesn't necessarily need to be a high production value. So you see videos that are getting like hundreds of thousands of views and so on. That isn't a lot of time editing. You don't need to really download any software to make a TikTok video. If you even, or if you go onto Instagram Reels or TikTok, a lot of them might be just yourself talking. It just takes an idea. I think it's the idea that nearly works well. Now, I spend a lot of time in editing, depending on different videos in front of green screens and whatever. But at the same time, sometimes I think that that mightn't be necessary. So there are a lot of things. I'm always trying to upskill in terms of the live streaming, especially. I didn't do much live streaming in college, and a lot of it is just kind of a bit of self knowledge, or try to YouTube tutorials are great. Tutorials online are great. And that's a lot of what I'm doing. I didn't really, you say I'm not, I wouldn't even consider myself an expert on TikTok. I've only been on it for 3 months and still trying to get the algorithm and see what works and see what doesn't work. It really is about testing as well at the start. This was what one of the advice that when I was looking at different videos, getting tips, and it really was testing especially at the very start, lots of different styles of videos and different things, and see what worked and what didn't work, and then trying to find out what worked in terms of views and sticking to that type of way. So in terms of technically, it doesn't actually need to be too much involved in terms of TikTok, because a lot of it is on the phone. A lot of their features is on the phone, even if it's just recording yourself. But I would say that different things help in terms of graphic design and all that. I sometimes get fearful. So you see like people using Canva and you see kind of technology advancing and it's getting more and more easy for the average Joe to come along and edit a video together or make a poster or a graphic.
And make you and me redundant.
Yeah, exactly. So it is great. It is great in that sense. But then why would someone hire a graphic designer if I can make a quick thing? Even though I would disagree, I'd completely disagree with that statement. But that's sometimes what people think as well. So there are more and more tools. So I think it just takes a bit of time or research really on YouTube and Google, and just say how do I X, Y, and Z? How do I insert an image into a video or whatever on TikTok? And there's millions and millions of different tutorials and articles and so on. So it just takes time really to kind of come over that. But it's also, well, I was going to say it can be easy, but also it definitely can't be easy, because I've been studying it for 5 years, then I've been working in it for 4 years now, nearly 5 years as well. So it does take time, but there's even the basic things. From my standards, people can do a lot more with a lot less, and that's how it seems to be going.
Yeah. I'll tell you what we will do. Some night we'll organise a live stream, you and me, right? And we'll actually do this. It'll be the first Global Gael live stream ever. And we'll go through the process of making these things, because I can imagine not just for Gaelic games and for football clubs and hurling clubs and camogie players around Europe, I'm sure there's a lot of Irish people with businesses, with restaurants and with all sorts of businesses around who could probably do with learning some of these things as well. And I know from, like, one of the things about making a podcast like this is that, the podcast is easy. It's easy talking to you. This is the crack, right? But it's trying to fucking spread it and get it out there and get people to listen to it. That's where the really hard work comes in, If I can ask you to look in your little crystal ball, right? Belgium GAA, as I said, have been one of the most dominant clubs in Europe, a huge club, always travel with 2 teams. Really great buzz around the place, really great teams. And where do you see Gaelic Games Europe or in Gaelic Games around the world, I suppose, in the next sort of 5 to 10 years? Are we always going to be sort of, dependent on an expat Irish community? Or can you see a point whereby, a little bit like in Galicia, in Spain now, and in Brittany and France, where they have their own little independent thing where everything happens in French or in Catalan or that kind of thing, and we're not really involved? Is that the future, a sort of a decentralised GAA of Europe and the Middle East and all over the place?
I would say so. Like yes and no. So there's always going to be people emigrating, kind of and wanting to travel and so on. And where you know what the song is titled, wherever you go, you'll find an Irish pub and so on. But I definitely do think that is a future. You used the term you mentioned Galicia, who seem to be football mad in that area in Spain.
Backers.
They're even showing the All Ireland finals on their TV, and actually our women have got to the Pan Euros final, who what was being under on the area, the TV channels live stream and so on. So, and you see New York after beating Leitrim and being for the first time ever, I believe, and they had players in their team who were American. Their father might be, I think their father was Irish or so on, but they were American, and American accents, obviously they were Irish American. So I do think eventually along the line that's going to keep coming down if the likes of, there's a few like people who settle here, kind of, there's still a few older lads and they're having kids who are playing GAA, and their dad or both their parents might be Irish, but they're born in Belgium and so on, and they're going to have those Irish roots, but they're I don't know whichever schools they're going to. They might be in a French school or a Dutch school or the European school, which is maybe just a Belgium only thing, but there's it eventually, I reckon it will filter down where a lot of people get involved in these sports, and it is you can see it happening. We see it happening around Europe, where a lot of people get involved who are not Irish or have any involvement on it. The likes of my girlfriend, she's Belgium, and she plays in a very high standard, and even won the player of the tournament in the Pan Euros, in the main football tournament with every club coming across. So and even when we had the All Ireland quarter final here in Maastricht, we scored, I think it was 5-3. It was a bit of a mad scoreline. We scored 5 goals and 3 points, and a hat-trick came from one of our ladies players who was from Copenhagen, and 2-2 came from a French woman. So we actually didn't have any scorers that were Irish on that ladies team. It was a great game, and the scoreline was a bit mad, but there was no Irish scorers as well, and the team was full of people from all over Europe who didn't have any roots involved, and just got involved through whatever way, through living in Brussels.
That's what I'm loving, this picture you're painting for me now. Non-native players scoring hat-tricks in quarterfinals and everything else like that. Sean, where can people find the GAA Room on various social media? How can they get in touch with you and follow your content?
Yeah. My content is on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, mainly, and it's just the GAA Room, at the GAA Room. So it's going great so far. It's around, say, 10 overall over the 3 platforms that I'm mainly on. It's got around 10,000 followers in the space of 3 months. I've had 1.5 million views on my content, mainly from TikTok. TikTok is just insane. Like I'm that's why I said earlier that I still don't have the grasp of TikTok as much, but like it's just it's a platform that people are just watching content so much and just digesting it, and it's nearly scary in a way, but like there's a gap there, or there's something there that the GAA can come into a bit more, I feel, and benefit, because it's crazy compared to Instagram or Twitter. So I've around 1.5 million views on well overall, but mostly coming from TikTok, and then I've around 100,000 likes and comments and stuff like that, and mainly coming from TikTok as well. So you can just follow me from the GAA Room and just type it in, and I should come up, hopefully, anyway, would be the plan.
Tremendous. I hope that everybody who's listening to this around the world is not only going to follow you on those 3 accounts, at the GAA Room on Twitter, on TikTok, and on Instagram, but also sort of contribute to it, and maybe even start their own accounts as well, to bring the glory of Gaelic games to people around the world. For now, Sean, thanks so much for talking to me.
No problem, Philip. Thanks very much for bringing me on. It was great to be on.